For our holiday card this week, we're making a card with a wreath on the front of what looks like a door. And there are a couple of tools that you'll need that you probably have. A wood grain stamp, or you could use wood grain designer paper. This one is from Hero Arts. Stampin' Up! Also makes one. And you'll need 1 or 2 leaf punches. I have had these, I know I've had this one at least 10 years and probably almost as long for this one. So any of your leaf punches will work fine, and we'll use those in just a moment. I'm going to be working with some craft cardstock, and I have Close to Cocoa ink, which is a little bit darker than the craft. I'm going to ink up my wood grain and stamp the entire front of my craft cardstock. And I've cut this to the traditional size card that will finish out 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Okay. And I want to press my card down. I'm just using the foam folder to give that a good press and ink up the front of the card. Now I'm also going to go ahead and cut the 2 top corners, round those, just like a door might be rounded. And now we're ready to add our leaves. I've taken my 2 leaf punches and several different scraps that I had of designer paper. I used designer paper because it was a little bit easier to punch, in varying shades of green. And I went ahead and punched a bunch of leaves. And you'll need something to mark a circle with. Now I'm using a Creative Memory circle cutter. I'm not actually going to cut a circle, I'm just going to mark it. So you can use any tool that you want. You can punch out a circle and use that as a template. Anything to mark the placement of your wreath, so you have some idea where to start gluing your leaves. So I'm just using a pencil to draw a circle there, and that will be my first line of glue. And then it's just a matter of layering leaves, starting with some of the larger ones. You can alternate their positions, and you'll be putting more glue on them as you go along. Alright, I need a little more glue there. And when I get the first layer on, I just go ahead and add a little bit more glue and add another layer. And you can do as many layers as you want. A couple of layers is probably fine. Alright, and I've also cut some smaller ones with a small leaf punch. It looks fine like it is, but if you've got a small leaf punch, you can use it too. And again, add just a little bit of glue. And put a few of your small punched shapes on top. Okay, I've added all the layers that I'm going to add, and we'll leave that to dry for just a moment. Right, while the leaves are drying, I'm going to take some Distress ink and distress the edges of my card. I'm using Vintage Photo. You could have used a little bit of that Close to Cocoa if you wanted. Okay. And I'm also going to put some berries on my wreath to go with the red ribbon that I'm going to use to tie the bow. And I didn't have any brads or anything that I could really use for red berries. So what I'm doing is using a marker, and I'm going to add some glossy accents, and that will create a berry kind of look. So I'm just going to do a few of these. I don't need a lot. Just a few scattered around on my wreath. It's probably enough, and the bow will go down there on the bottom. Right? And after I put my red dots on with a marker, then I just add a little drop of glossy accents on top of the red marker, and when it dries, you'll get a shiny looking little berry. Okay. For the bow, I have a piece of scrap ribbon, and to tie it in a bow, I'm doing 2 loops and tying them in a knot. And I did wash the glue off my hands before I did this, because it's really hard to work with otherwise. This over your bow. Alright, I'll go ahead and glue my bow on. You can use glue dots or using some more of the Tombow Mono glue. Oops, that's too much of it. Scrap paper to pull that off. Okay. Give that a second to dry. And the last thing that I'm going to need for my door with the wreath on it is an opener for the door, and I've chosen one of the antique brads from Stampin' Up. So I'll place that brad here on the side of the door, and our card will be all done.